Elon Musk's SpaceX is going to be going public soon. And you know what? The majority of high income earners are very excited about this. And they're talking about buying into it, investing into it. But it's interesting that in our country, we have such dichotomy where you have the upper income earners compared to the low income earners or even middle class. They're not able to have the same conversations. I hear a lot of people talking about investing, but then I think about my parents who are low middle. They actually don't even have a retirement. They're not even thinking about investing in anything at this point. They're just trying to make it day by day and making sure that they have food on the table, make sure they have a roof over their head.
The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. You would think that in a world in which a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500 company is making so much money, they would find a way to give back. They would find a way to bring the people, the lower level people within that business, or the people that they work with or the people that they engage with, up with them and try to find a way to financially pass that down. But right now, it just seems like company increases and values are increasing, but the lower class civilian is just not making ends meet.
A criticism is needed because without criticism, there's no need to improve. If there's always critics, then we know that there's always something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be improved on. By having these conversations, we can point out those flaws that we're seeing, and maybe someone out there who is more influential than us can make changes to those laws, to the legislations, so that it can help the low class, middle class, and whatever class that we all fall into. Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area. Welcome back to another episode of the Medico-Legal Brief here with Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. It's always exciting to get together once a week to have these important conversations that I feel like not a lot of people are having. And this week's topic is going to be about our current economic adventures. I'm going to use that term. There's a lot of ups and downs currently going on based on current political landscape, as well as our international wars and conflicts that we're dealing with. There's just so many things at play that directly impact our economics and our day-to-day lives that I wanted to hear how it's affecting Lawyer Nik's life, but then also talk about how it's affecting my job and what I do and my life as well.
Long, when we talk about the economy, it's such a broad, overarching word that different people, depending on where you're at, will define their approach to the quote unquote economy or economics differently. When you are of a lower socioeconomic status, you might view the economy one way. And when you are Elon Musk billionaire, you might be viewing the economy another way. And then you can extend it to local, regional, national, and international. And all of a sudden you get all these dynamics. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Obviously, I'm putting my lawyer glasses on for this, but there are things that I see in real estate, which then kind of relate back to my old profession as a lawyer that are of note and worth discussing where our nation is economically right now.
It's great that you brought up Elon Musk because it kind of ties into this economic change that we're probably going to be seeing here in the next couple of weeks to months. Because Elon Musk's SpaceX is going public soon, and the majority of high income earners are very excited about this, and they're talking about investing into it. But it's interesting that in our country, we have this dichotomy where you have the upper income earners compared to the low income earners or even middle class. They're not able to have the same conversations or focus in on the same things. And so I hear a lot of people talking about investing, but then I think about my parents who are low middle. They actually don't even have a retirement. They're not even thinking about investing in anything at this point. They're just trying to make it day by day and making sure that they have food on the table, make sure they have a roof over their head. I struggle with how I am able to see both sides, and I understand that everyone's kind of just focusing in on their lives and what's surrounding them. But I wish there was a solution that could bring us closer together so that we could focus on improving everyone's lives, not just a small subset of the community.
That's so true. And it's ironic that you brought that up because even this morning I was listening to a podcast on the SpaceX IPO and how you should be investing in these 5 companies because these 5 companies have contracts with SpaceX and everything will rise with SpaceX. At our age and our socioeconomic position, we're trying to figure out where do we put our money? How can we properly invest for the future? There are some people in this country that don't have that same privilege to say, how am I going to invest my money? Because all my money goes into paying off debt or all my money goes into my immediate situation, whether it be my kids, my family, my education, so on and so forth. And then I look at my mom. Congratulations, mom. She just retired from almost 40-year prestigious career, but now her approach is I'm no longer trying to invest. I'm trying to protect my retirement and make it extend for as long as possible. So what would have maybe have been a more liberal approach, a more risky approach to investing 20 years ago into a 401k now is a definite conservative approach because you don't want all that money to go away. Everybody's at a different point in their life. Everybody's in a different socioeconomic position, but it's weird how the quote unquote economics impact everybody as a nation. And ultimately, 10 years from now, we are judged by how we were as a nation, not how a certain class was performing during that time.
I'm curious to see how it has impacted your job, whether what you've heard from colleagues who are still practicing law versus what you currently do with real estate. Because I know that personally, the area that I currently live in, it's a booming area. There's a lot of people trying to move into the area, but there's not a lot of homes up for sale. There's not a lot of real estate that's readily available. That is a big sign on just kind of where the economics are these days, which is interesting because it's a big contrast to what the actual stock market is doing. Anyone that is following the stock market, it's still rising, which is crazy because everything that is going on, whether that's internationally or nationally, it should be the opposite, but it isn't. Obviously, we're not economics majors. We're not in that sort of realm. We don't have the expertise in it. We can only speculate. But it's just interesting to watch how people are rallying around the stock market, even though they're struggling on a day to day basis.
Exactly. I invest nationwide. Currently, I have a few homes under contract in different parts of the country. And in speaking with the sellers and speaking with my contacts, my boots on the ground, there are definitely some different scenarios that are happening. There are some individuals that are so desperate for financial relief and financial support that they're willing to sell the property at a discount because they just need access to quick cash. There are other individuals that don't recognize the fact that the comps in their area are not supporting the value that they think is on their home. But then I try to be transparent in these conversations and at least give some sort of solutions because I feel like that's the only way, the right way to do business. What we're seeing a lot of right now is increase in foreclosures. You're starting to see an increase in home sales, but those homes sitting on the market for a little bit longer because people are asking top dollar for their homes, which is equivalent to what was going on during the COVID times. You were getting top dollar for everything. There were a lot of bidding wars that were happening, but now not so much. There's a shift in real estate, and that goes down to the people. Why do people need the money? Are they stressed economically to where they need to sell their home at a discount? Are they stressed economically to where there's family discord and now they're getting a divorce because there's that pressure, that unspoken financial pressure in their relationship, and now their relationship is broken up? Are they needing to move in with family members to help support because financially their father or mother can't do what they need to do? So now they're combining households. There's a lot of different things there, and it can all be traced back to the economy. But to your point, you look at the stock market and you're almost like, when is this going to crash? When is this going to all come tumbling down? For the last 3 or 4 years, everybody keeps saying it's going to crash, it's going to crash, it's going to crash. And the stock market just keeps proving us wrong. It's just going up and going up and going up and going up.
Yeah. And again, I think the average American doesn't really invest in the stock market. The data shows that most people aren't even saving that much or has an emergency fund that is worth much. That's really concerning. But you had mentioned a shift in focus or shift in priorities, and I'm seeing that a lot in the medical field. I see a lot of patients kind of foregoing their medical health insurance, whether that's because they lost their job, whether that's because they are having to devote time elsewhere, therefore they don't qualify for benefits. But I'm seeing patients maybe make their annual visits, but then not really willing to come in for those acute visits, even if they truly need it. They're more willing to put their health on the line and just hope that things will pass on its own rather than come in for expertise because they don't want that extra medical bill. The other thing I'm seeing is that patients are refusing to go to the emergency room, even when it's recommended, because they know that when they go to the emergency room, they're going to be stuck with a huge bill, which is another debt that they will have to pay off in the future. And it's very frustrating because all I want to do is be able to help my patients as much as possible. And I try it as best as I can by answering a lot of messages. But there are times or situations where it's important that I do a physical exam. If patients aren't willing to come in, I can't truly give my full advice. And so I'm seeing seeing how the economic changes or landscape or adventure that we're kind of traveling through right now is directly impacting the way I practice medicine and the way that patients seek out medical care.
Definitely. When I left Lockheed to pursue real estate investing, I did not have adequate insurance. I had to go through the Affordable Care Act to make sure I could afford insurance. And there was discussions on, okay, if this happens or I have this ailment, should I go? Should I wait? Can we spend the money? We only have so much in savings and we can only last so long. Is it worth it to go try to deal with this? And in discussions with my wife, there were a lot of times where we kind of fell back on the fact that if we don't address it now, it's going to become a bigger issue in the future. And we are going to end up spending more money in the future dealing with it then than if we were to deal with it right now. And I think that that's a very popular sentiment. You're avoiding addressing something right now. You're putting your head in the sand. And what you don't realize is you're actually creating more problems for you in the future. And it's going to actually be more expensive for you in the future. It's like if you have a water leak in your house, bringing it back to real estate. If you have a leak in your house, you might not want to spend the $200 to get the plumber out. But if you don't get the plumber out and spend that $200, it's going to end up being a $2,000 problem in 2 months when the wood's rotting and you got mold all over your bathroom. So it's hard, and people are constantly doing kind of a risk analysis, a cost benefit of, well, I can either put food on my table right now or I can pay the plumber. I'm going to choose to put food on the table right now. And that's not a fun place for any person to be in. That's not a fun decision to make.
I know that you are just an adjunct professor these days and you're not truly practicing law, but I know you have a lot of lawyer friends. I'm curious whether or not when we go through these sort of economic ups and downs, whether or not law or people who seek out lawyers diminishes. Do we see less lawsuits being filed during cases like this? During COVID, did we see kind of a disinterest in bringing something to trial, keeping in mind that we weren't able to do things in person? A lot of things were virtual, but I'm curious whether or not the numbers showed similar to what it did with medicine, which is people seeked out less care. I wonder if people seeked out less legal advice.
It's the exact same thing that you're saying. When you're looking at whether or not to address something legally, you have to look at your bank account and make sure that you can afford to pay for it. And unlike medicine, unlike health, there's no insurance. I know that some companies have legal insurance where you can go and you can pay and have a lawyer have a quick conversation with you. But for the most part, if you have legal troubles, there's no insurance for that. So you really have to determine, okay, is me pursuing something of this nature worth the money I'm going to have to spend? Now, obviously, there's some lawyers that can do things on contingency to where they can take on a case, and at the end of the case, if there's money to be had, they get paid out of that money. But for the most part, sometimes it's about, I need to pursue it now, but I don't have the funds to do so. So then when you look at that situation, you have clients either not coming in, not paying their bills, not pursuing legal recourse, or they're looking for the cheaper option, whether that's representing themselves or whether that's paying for maybe a lawyer who doesn't quite have the experience, maybe a lawyer who's newer to the field or fresh out of law school, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's great experience for that lawyer. But if you need somebody that's got 20 years of experience and you're getting somebody that has 2 years of experience, that may not be the best situation for your case. So yeah, it impacts everything. And then when you actually look at the law firm, you look at what attorneys are making. If you're not bringing in the business, you can't pay the people that you need to be paying to be in that business. Then you look at layoffs, you look at people getting let go, you look at people being fired. And so it's just kind of a vicious circle. And that can probably equate to medicine a little bit too. If you cannot pay to go in to see your doctor, what are you doing? You're looking at ChatGPT. You're trying to self-diagnose. You might be going into a lower level clinician or somebody who's maybe not as experienced with what you should be looking for. And then your health fails. It's all a vicious circle, and the reliance on the cheap and easy and efficient, both those sentiments exist when in our professions, lawyer and doctor, you're very front facing to patients and clients and trying to do what's right by them.
You know who I don't hear complaining about this economic state that we're in? It's a lot of the CEOs, especially of the hospital systems and health insurances. They are still profiting somehow. Quarter after quarter, when they bring out their numbers, we're seeing the numbers improve. We're seeing the profits widen. Like, I just can't believe how they're able to get away with it. And I don't understand how we as the public, we as a lawyer and a physician are not able to fight back on that. It's so frustrating. And I can only imagine what a patient or a client who doesn't have the knowledge that we do, how are they supposed to advocate for themselves in this system that seems to be working against us?
We've talked about it. I am a capitalist. I am not a millionaire or a billionaire, so I have the right to bitch about millionaire and billionaires. You look at the stock prices of these companies. We just talked about it. They're going up and up and up and up and up. But the lower class, the middleman, we're not seeing the same sort of return into the economy, so to speak. It is in a weird way right now that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And you would think that in a world in which Fortune 500 company is making so much money, they would find a way to give back. They would find a way to bring the people, the lower level people within that business, or the people that they work with, or the people that they engage with, up with them and try to find a way to financially pass that down. But right now, it just seems like company values are increasing, but the lower class civilian is just not making ends meet.
We've had this more in-depth conversation about capitalism versus socialism in one of our other episodes, and our viewers should go check that out. I wish people knew, the public knew, that medicine costs as much as it does. We see it as such a big burden on our economics, and it's not because we're paying physicians high salaries, even though that's what people think is that physicians are just really these high income earners and just money hungry. But the majority of your medical costs actually are being paid to the administrators in these health systems, whether that's the CEO, CMO. There's so many more administrative roles than there are actual physicians, medical clinicians that are out there actually practicing medicine and doing the dirty work.
This kind of leads to, I think, what they're calling the middle class squeeze, where we have middle class individuals that are professionals making a good bit of money, but they still feel the financial burden and the financial struggle. So, as a middle manager, you might be getting paid six figures, but you still feel the pressures of the economy. But then as you start looking up the chain and you say, okay, this person above me is making 200,000, this person's making 300, this person's making 500, this person's making a million plus bonuses. It's kind of, where is the trickle down? How come that as a middle class individual with a prestigious profession, whether it's in business or IT or software or real estate or medicine, how come there's still this financial burden? I don't think it's because people are living outside of their means. It's the fact that money in some instance is being hoarded or being funneled into these entities, and the people that control the entities are just benefiting from it.
Yeah, again, the economics, the income, the money affects not just the high income earners. Obviously, they're really enjoying their profits, but it even affects locally. I want to talk about my kids and how it's affected their lives. Obviously, they're still in a great place. I cannot complain about anything. They have a roof over their heads, they have food on the table. But our summer looks a little differently this summer compared to other summers. We're not traveling, which is fine. We're doing more camping trips. We're doing more things that are free where we can drive to versus flying to, especially with the state of gasoline right now. Prices of flights is just crazy. I consider myself middle to probably high middle compared to where I previously was, which was low to low middle living with my parents. And I know the prestige and the privilege that I have in being able to jump those rungs of the income ladder. But I can't imagine the other people, everyone else that is struggling to just make ends meet for the day to day needs.
I completely agree. And it's not the fact that things have changed with us, it's the fact that things have changed in the economy. To hop on a plane and go somewhere is more expensive. Hotel rooms are more expensive. Airbnbs are more expensive. I go out and I try to buy a coffee, and my coffee is $11. Why am I paying $11 for a coffee? So then it goes to, well, I have coffee at home. I'm going to go buy a bag for $10 and make it myself. Then you start losing sight of all these kind of luxuries that you used to have that were at a more attainable price. And you start slimming down because you don't know when the bleeding is going to end. And again, we're speaking from a place of being middle to upper middle class. It's a place of what some people would consider privilege. Obviously, I go back to, we worked our asses off to be here. But at the same time, if I'm experiencing this pressure, I couldn't imagine somebody experiencing the same pressure that doesn't have as much access to financial assistance or a good job, somebody who might be a single mother who has to work 40 hours a week, work two jobs. There's different dynamics there. I just couldn't imagine. As we're here talking about our vacations and how our summers look a little bit different, there are those individuals that say, well, I can't afford to buy eggs because eggs are skyrocketing. And now I have to find a substitute for eggs. When realistically, it's something that seems so simple and so trivial.
We take a lot of things for granted. We, as a country, even though there is a big disparity between high income versus low and middle, a lot of the lower middle class actually use a lot of credit card debt to kind of fund their lives. And it's just the basic needs. Obviously, some people make really poor choices and buy cars that they can't afford or homes that they can't afford, including physicians and lawyers. We come out of school doing the exact same thing. Oh, we think we have a higher income, therefore we're buying bigger, better, when it's not absolutely necessary. Especially when we are dealing with such a volatile economic state right now, it's really important that we kind of pare down to the needs that we have rather than the wants that we want to enjoy. For me, my focus is making sure that my kids have the experiences that I want them to have. And that does not mean that we are traveling everywhere every weekend. I want to make sure that they're doing things that are good for their health, but also their mental health. Whether that is getting outside to go to the park, whether that is going to the pool to swim, bike riding. These are things that a lot of us take for granted. We don't think about it because we are so encapsulated in our day to day life, our work, our schedule, our monotony, that we forget that those are things that our parents, our grandparents used to do. And that was what was considered fun. And now we've gotten to the point where the transportation is so easy access that we think what's fun is actually traveling across the country or flying to another country to do what we could have done in our backyard.
It's almost going back to basics, grabbing a fishing pole and going to the pond, going for a walk outside, going camping. It's all these things that when we were younger, we used to do them all the time, and that was our vacation. A perfect example of kind of what you're getting to is look at the cost for a family of four to go to Disney World. I saw something where they ran the numbers. It was cheaper to fly to Japan and go to Disney in Japan than it was to travel to Florida and go to Disney in Florida for a family of four, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is, Disney as a corporation, they're raising the prices for whatever reason, whether they're trying to pay more people, whether they're trying to build more things, whether they're trying to make more Marvel movies, I don't know. But when it comes down to it, there's still people trying to pay to have that experience. You're taking your hard-earned money, a year's salary, and spending $5,000 to $10,000 to go to Disney, and for what? For a 3 or 4 day experience. So I definitely think there needs to be a shift. And you had a term there that I want to revisit. You said that you're focusing on your kids' mental health. As a doctor, are you seeing patients come in with more mental health issues, whether it be stress, frustration, depression, what have you, because of the current state of the economy?
Yes, ever since really prior to COVID, there was a lot of anxiety, depression, mood disorders that was there that people didn't really talk about, but we knew it was there. Some people would come in and get it treated. COVID really escalated all of that. Everyone kind of isolated on their own. All of this really came out to the forefront. And then the discussion was okay, you got to get treated. Now we're coming out of the pandemic. We want to make sure that we're in our best state. And so you saw an influx of patients coming in wanting or seeking help. And so there's not enough therapists. Everyone now is getting put on medications because they just don't understand the outlets, the other alternative outlets for them to reach for so that they can improve. But absolutely, now with the economics changes that we're seeing, whether people are losing jobs, people are being laid off, it puts a lot of strain and stress on a lot of people. Even if you're in college, how are you going to pay for tuition? If you have a family, how are you going to pay for the food and the daycare or the babysitting that you need so that you can go and work your job? Everyone in every aspect, in every perspective of life right now is struggling. And we are seeing that in the medical field. Absolutely. People are coming in from 7, 8 years old, coming in complaining about how anxious they are because mom and dad are never home and they're always working, versus the grandpa, grandma who is on their deathbed and they're worried about what the family's going to do when they pass. Are they going to have enough money? What are they going to do with the home? How are they going to be able to support themselves, especially with the struggles that we're dealing with nowadays?
Definitely. And it's sad to hear that people are dealing with anxiety and depression. based on financial circumstances. It's a hard pill to swallow. No pun intended. You're right. We just kind of throw the medication at them. We throw the here is the quick simple solution, but you know what? You're going to spend some money if you don't have health insurance or if you had poor health insurance. Obviously, the people with the means have the best health insurance. People without the means don't really have good health insurance. And then I think that leads to this distrust of these institutions. We've talked about these institutions making money. And yeah, if you work for one of the Fortune 500 companies, you might be in a better place than if you don't. But at the same time, distrust for institutions are a real thing. You're seeing the rich get richer and you're seeing Elon Musk on pace to become a trillionaire. And you think, okay, how come I'm not seeing any of that? And now you don't want to work with big business. You don't want to work with corporations. You might be seeking out small businesses, but I don't know about you. As a real estate investor driving around, I'm always looking at commercial properties. I'm always wondering, okay, what's that new place going to be? What's that empty space going to turn into? There's a lot more emptier space out there than there used to be. And I feel like turnaround on small business is even becoming a thing to where I'm not seeing small businesses last. They're coming and going really fast, and we've talked about this. That's the American dream, being able to be a small business owner and grow something out of it. I know your parents were small business owners, and so trying to survive and not only have a paycheck for your family, but also pay the people that are included in that small business is important. If you're not lasting in your community, then go bankrupt, you go work for the corporation that's not gonna pay you worth. It's very frustrating.
Mhm, mhm. Is there anything else you wanted to comment about our economic state and how it's affecting us?
Obviously, there's so much more that we can go into. Cost of education, the fact that people can't buy homes right now. There's so many dynamics. And I hope that our listeners kind of listen to this podcast with a very open mind. I know that we've been very critical about certain entities and certain aspects of the economy, but I think it comes from a good place. I want to see people succeed and I want to see people flourish and I want to see our economy flourish. I want to see everybody go to Disney World, just not for the cost of a trip to Japan.
Right. A criticism is needed because without criticism, there's no need to improve. If there's always critics, then we know that there's always something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be improved on. By having these conversations, we can point out those flaws that we're seeing, and maybe someone out there who is more influential than us can make changes to those laws, to the legislations, so that it can help the low class, middle class, and whatever class that we all fall into.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.